Thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. A Glimpse of the Kingdom can remain free because of generous donors like you. If you'd like to donate, feel free to do so online, or you can send payments through Facebook Messenger. Don't forget to tell your friends about it so that they can enjoy this ministry as well. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any podcasts.
You can listen to my daddy every single day, like in the gym, in the car, or just at home. Glimpse of the Kingdom is awesome!
Hello, thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I'm David Pendergrass. It's official. Today's a special guest, all the way from California. Ryan is here and has come just to hang out for a weekend. And I hope you've had a good time, Ryan.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm loving Kansas. It's a great spot, great food.
Hope my pajamas have been comfortable.
Yeah, they have been. In your bed and everything.
You too can come visit for $9.99, $99, $95 for 3 days to get you. Pay extra for a toothbrush, but we're welcome to have you.
That beats California prices.
That's
sure.
right.
Yeah.
Kind of like Disney World prices. Well, so glad you're here. We were sitting around chatting about all kinds of stuff between all kinds of events that have occurred. My son's birthday just occurred, and we've been hanging out all the time and chilling, and it's been great. And one of the things we were talking about just the other day was the role of science and how people still look up to science a lot. I thought it'd be helpful to kind of chat about that some. And what were you saying the other day?
Question I had is that I feel like it seems a lot of skeptics and atheists tend to gravitate towards science quite a bit, and that's they're real big fans of science. They try to or they know, I mean, generally more than the average person about it, and science is very important to them. And I guess my question is, why is that? I mean, I love science too. I think it's great. I've always been fascinated with like a lot of different sciences, I guess. But I'm just curious why it's so important for a lot of atheists. What draws them so much to it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that is a great question, a great point. I know as we were chatting about it, I was thinking more since then, and I remember we were chatting about where does maybe that come from, that idea, and I'm not exactly sure it comes from, but I know that the humanist movement that started in the Enlightenment era, or many say actually the Renaissance, but the Enlightenment started this whole push, particularly in this period, a push toward the fact that we can discover things without the church having to tell us what we know about the world.
Yeah.
And the humanist movement was not an anti-church movement at first, from what the specials I've read. And they said it just started the idea that we can discover things by reason. We can think things through. We don't have to necessarily go to the Bible for it, or we can use the scientific method to discover it. But of course, it's an easy step to go from that to, well, then why ever consult the church or the Bible ever? And of course, I say the church with a capital C, meaning typically the Roman Catholic Church, if you're, at the time European in the Renaissance.
Yeah.
And it just led to the idea that we don't need it. And that the standard thing nowadays, of course, is you don't want to do it. And I did a podcast that still gets a lot of, what's it called? What do they call it these days? What do young people call it? A lot of shade. What's the Ebonics? Heat.
Shade.
A lot of...
like the shade grown
coffee.
Yeah.
Man, that's the best coffee ever. We had some shade grown coffee.
Yeah.
There's another word that I've heard, Ebonics. Anyway, the point is people don't like a lot of hate on Twitter, and I did a podcast on why scientists don't talk about God. And all of the vitriol that has been expressed toward me and that Twitter and my mama has been because not really, kind of.
Wait a minute, really?
Really? I don't think not yet. That hasn't happened yet. I give atheists credit on that one.
Yeah.
But what they have, what we're upset was, of course they don't, because God doesn't exist, or they'll say that's just stupid because they don't need to. And of course, I'm always surprised at how much they comment on things without having listened to what I actually said. Mm-hmm. And though they might disagree, and that's fine, but I've heard repeatedly, and I say this in a podcast, I just came from a conference where Sean Carroll, who's an atheist, who had just said this, that we never talk about God at these professional meetings. And so that's why I even quoted it. The reason why scientists don't talk about God is because, and it's because they're naturalists. And this philosophical assumption that they're naturalists means I don't have to use God to explain what occurs in the world.
Right.
And my point wasn't to critique him on that point. It was to say, no wonder they don't talk about God. But the question, of course, is naturalism true? But if I'm a naturalist, of course I don't talk about God. If I'm a Christian, my second point in that, and you listen to podcasts or anyone if you want, the listeners, but I still make the same point. I don't expect atheists to talk about God, but I don't expect Christian scientists to talk about God when they're doing straight up scientific inquiry. If I go to the laboratory and I'm trying to discover the weight of cobalt or whatever it is, I don't want to say, I wonder how God did this. I don't have to ask that question because we have a scientific method. It doesn't mean it's the only possible method we use to learn truth about the world. The scientific method doesn't tell me anything about how it feels to be in love. It doesn't teach me anything about why poetry rings true or why sunset is pretty, on it goes. So there wasn't a dog the scientific method or anything. That relates to your question and our conversation now, because I think about that often and how people still, so many, not all, worship at the feet of the scientific method, and they worship the feet of scientists. And you and I know we're talking, we've said this a lot, I've said a lot in my podcast, but this is a novel observation, but how often people just, I don't better word, they worship at the feet of scientists to ask them. Neil deGrasse Tyson has been asked 5 billion times. He'll tell you this in his interviews all the time. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in God? Stephen Hawking, is there a God? Do you believe in God?
Yeah.
They don't ask that of chefs. They don't ask that of people who design Legos, as far as I know.
I ask chefs that a lot.
You ask chefs a lot. You're the only person I've ever... I ask architects. People who work on roofs. I have a friend. That's the first thing I asked them.
They look like experts to me.
They look like
theology.
It. Yeah. Because of course, it assumes that the fact that they're asking them means they assume these people have the ultimate truth and that they're in the same realm of knowledge. And two, I think it demonstrates that the society in which they ask it, that the average person thinks it. Because, just like we're laughing now, if a person on CNN... is it C-SPAN? They do the book of the month. I mean, the author of the month, and they bring other people, authors.
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson has, I think, probably done it. He's at least once because I've seen it on there. It's like 4 hours of grilling and 3 hours of whatever. That's not a chef, and that's a pun. But anyway, they talk all the time, and they ask him this all the time. The fact that the interviewer asks the question demonstrates society accepts it, because if he brought on a chef or a toy maker, do you believe in God? The person would giggle, the audience would giggle, but no one calls out upset. Like they're so frustrated that he asked the question. So that's how far the West have we come, that now we think that we want to know what's true in the world. We ask a scientist. Where does that come from? I think it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years of a breach that occurred between scholasticism and humanism. This idea that I don't need God to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. A long time the church did say you needed God to make sense of the world. So if we didn't know why the planets orbited the way they did, the perturbations they had, and the orbital pattern, God must have done it. Well, I know there's gravity. I understand that.
Yeah.
I get that. I just don't know why we have to do that today.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of God the gaps kind of, back then. But then, the more we discover about, within the universe, we find it's really, there's a lot of natural explanations. So I think that it keeps building and building. We're finding out more and more about the universe. And we feel like there's less of a need. And, there's natural explanations. God's not required for all this stuff, is not the actual explanation for it. So I guess, over time, people, I guess, decide that, hey, we need God less and less, so maybe he doesn't even exist at all, or, he's not like required. And if we don't know something now, we will eventually, naturally. But, like you said, in multiple podcasts, there's a lot of things that science can't explain and won't ever be able to explain. It's just, that's a limitation of, studying the natural world, and studying, there's a lot of, you can explain and find out a lot of things about it, but, that's why there's, things like philosophy to help, learn about things that maybe are more metaphysical, along those lines. So, yeah.
And I disagree with everything you just said, but I'll keep going.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
I don't want to bore the people. No. And we were talking about...
I do too. Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
I disagree with what I just said.
Yeah. I just made all that up. Yeah.
You can follow Ryan too on his own podcast.
Yeah. I'll be plugging my own podcast. Everything I say on there too is made up, and
that's good stuff. Yeah. That's good stuff. Now where was I going? Oh yeah. Scientists. People. I remember we were chatting about this last night. We were saying, why do you think people gravitate? I'm using different vocabulary. I'm just paraphrasing it. Why do you think people gravitate toward this overwhelming appreciation, almost obsession sometimes with scientists? And of course, I'm sure there are multiple reasons, as there are for all things. I'm personally convinced that the reason why most people want to be associated with science and the scientific method and atheism or agnosticism is because of a psychological need to feel smart. Or to say it a different way, a psychological need not to be seen as stupid. And they're different. They're different. And because one is embarrassment. One is shame and embarrassment. That's not to be seen as stupid. And one is just to be smart, is usually a sign of arrogance or ego or pride. Those are different things.
Yeah.
And I think those are powerful motivators. And it works on all fields. I mean, Christians can have the same motivation sometimes. But I think we are doing a disservice to the discussion if we don't talk about the fact that we have emotional needs. And I wrote about this in my book and did a podcast called Psychological Reasons Not to Believe in God. Right. That's another reason why that's another podcast atheists don't always like. They don't always listen to it, but they'll, because it's not real or whatever. But I'm not just being silly, but they don't like that one either. Right. Which is fine. But if they listen to it, I grant very quickly. In fact, I don't remember, it's been a while. I think I start out by saying there are typical reasons why a Christian or an atheist might believe in God. That is, I'm granting that. It's not like it's a one-way street. Right. Some people believe in God because their parents told them so, and that's enough for them. Right. And that frustrates the snot out of people who want to know reasons why, and they go, I don't know, I just do, or my mama told me, or I'm American, or whatever it is. And I would argue, I think if those who care about the text in 1 Peter 3 and other texts, we shouldn't just say, just because I am, or just so. Yeah. But then I go on to say, but then it works both ways, that there are people who don't believe for various reasons. There have been studies on people, atheists, who had bad relationships with their fathers and on and on. Right, yeah. But nevertheless, one of the things I emphasize in that, and I'm saying now distinctively, or to emphasize, is that the need that a person has for a lot of, a significant segment of the population, not to be seen as stupid. And when other people they think are not stupid or smart, they follow Tyson and Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss and all these people in the Dawkins, I'm on and on it goes. When they follow these people, they have to be in that crowd. Right. And then you buy into very quickly, as Richard Hitchens. Yeah. I know Christopher Hitchens, I get them all confused. As Chris Hitchens used to say, of course, before dying of cancer, all the time about how religion is superstition. It's superstition. And so it just immediately, that's why you put it in the same category of Santa Claus or believing in dragons or unicorns or leprechauns or the flying spaghetti monster. Yeah. So that you just put it in this category of profound idiocy. And it's almost an argument ad absurdum. And I find this all the time on Twitter when people respond to me, and I see it on Facebook, see it on YouTube comments, watch the videos at times, but certainly on Twitter when they respond to mine, the comments, the rejoinders are that petty. Yeah. And I'm not being mean. I'm not trying to be mean at all. It's based on that kind of assumption that it's the stupidest possible thing to think about. Right, yeah. Maybe it is, but I don't think it's the stupidest thing. I don't think the overwhelming amount of brilliant people are all stupid. I don't think they're all... There's got to be something more than that. And that's why people who usually take it seriously, well, I just think that they should take it more seriously. They might disagree with it. But anyway, I think that's one reason why. I think people who like to hang out with people and the scientists, and of course the scientists say so. And I'll say this last thing, and you can jump in there. It reminds me of, if you're all familiar with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the MBTI. If you're not, you can look it up for free, Myers-Briggs. And I've used it and taught it for years and years. And there's a distinction that they made between it's a mother and daughter, that between a thinker type and a feeler type. The thinker type is how they process It's about how you process information, basically.
Right.
The thinker type prefers to process information removed from personal interaction. So thinker types tend to be better at abstract thought, numbers, quote unquote scientific stuff.
Right.
Things, rocks, and black holes.
Yeah.
Feeler types process information typically associated with people.
Yeah.
So it's not about intelligence. You can have very, very smart feeler types, very smart thinker types. It's how they process it. Most feeler types, studies demonstrate this. Most feeler types are women. It's around like 80-something%.
Right.
Around 80% of men are thinker types. That explains why most people who are scientists are men. It doesn't mean women aren't smart. It means they don't prefer it. My
Right.
wife, who's very intelligent, she doesn't want to sit around and talk about black holes.
Yeah.
She can understand it if we talked about it. She's not an idiot. She's like, doesn't care. She'd much
Right.
rather talk about how things relate to other people. And while I'm like that, and I've done this before, probably in podcasts, but certainly in person, her, my wife, and her mom, in particular, her mom will say things, I know I'm not smart. And I'm like, yeah, she can remember amazing detail
Right.
of a person's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met her 23 years ago. She was wearing a green dress. We met at McDonald's. Remember she had the sausage eating biscuit? And I'm like, how in the world? Yeah, later on I went to Target and we bought the It is astonishing, the stuff. And she'll look at me and go, how do you remember all the things you do? I don't get it. I'm like, what? It's just we store it different information.
Yeah.
But people who store the abstract more, that's not related to a person, like the force of gravity, well, that kind of stuff. Well, they're into being science. Well, then but one of the, my therefore is, one thing we learn from studies is that thinker types, one of the greatest fears that a thinker type has, and I'm a thinker type, is they have a deep-seated fear of how they get value as being seen as or perceived as unintelligent or stupid or duped. These are sins to them. Well, I'm just convinced of that. Now, what I mean that is, and I'll say this caveat one more time, I'm not saying if you're an atheist you have nothing but bad arguments. I think you do. I don't think they're compelling for me. What I mean is, to answer the question of why do you think so many people are atheists or scientists or find themselves attracted to scientists or always asking scientists why they think about God and so forth.
Yeah.
I think is largely, if not chiefly, predicated on this emotional need not to be seen as stupid or duped or imbecilic, and or the need to be smart,
right?
Or feel that you are smarter than an ego issue.
Yeah.
And we ought to talk about those things. Craig never wants to talk about it.
Right.
Bill Craig, William Lane Craig, and I love him, but other people don't. And I don't want to talk about it for ad hominem. And I'm not saying it's ad hominem now. I'm not saying if you're an atheist and you're a thinker type, therefore you're stupid. That doesn't logically follow.
Not at all.
I'm talking about the reason why a person's very interested in being in that group. Because why else do you explain that a large segment of the population couldn't care less about apologetics?
Right, yeah.
Or what atheists tell me, or what Neil deGrasse Tyson says. My
Right.
wife doesn't give a rip. She'll go, I don't care what he thinks about God. I don't care what he thinks about black holes.
Yeah.
You see? They don't care. So what do we do with all those people? Thinker types go, because they're stupid.
Right.
It's just immediate, we're the bright ones.
Right, yeah.
Well, that doesn't answer why the population's so divided, and I think I have the answer. There, it's settled.
Yeah.
Next, easy.
Yeah.
That's just a
Boom.
joke.
Just drop that mic right now.
I would if it were clang loud.
Yeah. I guess another thought I had is that just came to mind is why do they or why people gravitate towards atheist scientists more so than like philosophers, or at least that's kind of my impression. Like they seem to lean towards more of the scientific stuff rather than like atheist philosophy. I'm sure they'll grab like quotes from them as well. If they're defending atheism, but it seems to me that
That's
it's more scientific.
I think for two reasons, maybe at least two reasons. This, and of course, I don't have data to back this up. And I'm sorry not to have data, but anecdotally, based on the literature I've read and stuff I observe, I think one reason is because most people, maybe three reasons. The first is people are ignorant. There is such a thing as a philosophy specialist. I think most people really don't know that.
Okay.
I really don't think people do that. I think people really don't think, besides an undergrad class at university, that there's a whole field of inquiry where people study this stuff. I don't think they do. I think most people will be surprised by that. And I could give you tons of anecdotal evidence for that. Yeah. Of stories I've had people, loved ones, people who mean well, who talk about evil and suffering or whatever, or why we exist. And I'll say, well, yeah, there's a lot of authors. And they go, well, we'll never know. Like, story's over.
Wow.
There's no sense of, did you know there's a whole field of inquiry? Did you know they've been talking about this for thousands of years? It's done.
Oh.
That didn't mean it. It just means they're just ignorant. I mean, in a good way, they're just ignorant.
Yeah.
I think the other two reasons on the positive side would be, that is to say, not just critiquing maybe ignorance or analyzing it, maybe not critiquing it, though I wish they would know more in that sense. Would be, is that it does help them. It's understand things in a concrete way.
I see.
So if I listen to an atheist scientist who told me that I just discovered a way to grow back to put a limb after a war vet came home,
right? Yeah.
Or whatever it might be, I can see that it's what everyone says when Dawkins and Krauss, all of them say, well, why believe? Well, it works. It works. The point is that's the number one thing. And Americans particularly, I think in the West, we are chiefly pragmatists. We are pragmatists. And they've done studies on this. They study children's books that are Asian, say Chinese descent, which of course a lot more Confucianism and Taoism, but particularly because Confucius, he argued that the basis of all society is relationship. So they'll start out with their children as saying, that's my brother, that's my sister, that's my friend, let's play together. I honor my parents, and so forth. In the American school system, it's a ball bounces, the duck quacks. It's functional and pragmatic and how to build things and how to do it. So part of it's a cultural thing. I'm convinced of it. And I think when it comes to scientists who typically, I think studies demonstrate typically are atheists or agnostic at most.
A lot of them,
They can see the results, what we're doing here. Not all the time. I think they can. I think it's the second big reason because it's that concrete, practical, quote unquote, it works. And I think the third reason is something we've already chatted about privately is I think a big reason is since most people, a big chunk of society, now it's true to say that most people who like atheist scientists or most people who follow scientists more often than not are atheistic. And that's because, philosophically speaking, they're naturalist.
Right.
And if you're not familiar in the podcast audience, the naturalism basically is a belief that all which exists is made of matter and energy, basically. So the whole show, everything you could ever think of that exists in reality can be reduced down to physics. So matter and energy. Everything from the thoughts in your head to black star holes to quasars, whatever it might be.
Right.
Everything somehow can be relegated back down. Our own thoughts, they would say, are governed by the laws of nature. If you already believe that, this is, the other day I was thinking about this, and to me it was a big epiphany. I kept thinking there's got to be another element of what I'm missing, and I think this is it. I think because they're naturalist, there is an inchoate or subconscious and sometimes conscious belief that since we're naturalists and all that exists is matter and energy, it means that this is all there is. So when I die, I'm dead. I was talking the other day with an atheist. And he said the very thing. I said, what do you think happens afterwards? He goes, nothing. I think when you think that's all there is, it means that I asked him when I'm thinking about it, I said, does that belief affect the way you live? And he paused for a while and he goes, I don't know, I guess besides maybe it's precious to me, life is, time is. And I was thinking about that and what I'm about to say, and that is, if you believe that life is, most of them would say this, precious and time sensitive, then it means you will always praise the people who help you live longer. If that's your chief value of living as long as you can, you'll always praise the people who have lived longer. So when the doctors develop that heart device that allows you longer, when they stop cancer and on, for them, they want to champion that over and over. See, what have Christians been doing? And this is exactly what I've heard. I've heard Stephen Hawking and Lawrence Krauss. What are the philosophers doing? I mean, Stephen Hawking begins his book with philosophy's dead. We don't need it anymore. And Krauss has said it over. Krauss has just changed his tune, by the way. I don't know if you know this. None too long ago, there was an interview. He just started changing his tune a little bit and said, well, scientists do some philosophy. We don't need philosophers. Which, come on, Lawrence. What do you call the person? I think it was Craig who said it's like saying we can do physics without needing physicists. I mean, this is ridiculous. But he's trying so hard not to give any room for it. But anyway, the point is, because for their mind, we rule the world in the Western mindset because the chief value is survival. Survival of the fittest. And if I can help you by extending your life, I want to find our worship at their feet. And that for their mind, religious people have been left way in the dust because we're not helping progress the lifespan of a person. And I absolutely understand that point and concede the point if naturalism is true.
Right, yeah.
Now, as a Christian, I care about the longevity. Of course I do.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, as the Christian worldview, I don't think it's the soul thing.
Right.
It's not even the gene
Yeah.
thing. I don't want you to die soon. I don't want to die soon. I want my kids to die soon.
Right.
And if a scientist could develop a way to take away diabetes and cancer and whatever,
Yeah.
of course I
That's
want to
great.
do that.
Yeah.
But I know why I'm doing it. As a Christian, I want to alleviate this suffering as best as I can.
Yeah.
But I'm consciously aware that is absolutely a short time this world deal.
Right.
The people Jesus healed in his ministry died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He extended the lifespan of Lazarus, and that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And Lazarus died again.
Yeah.
In fact, it seems to have been the case that the rumor was he was going to live forever. The end of John 20 and 21, the one who loved, he says, the idea is, no, he's not going to live forever. He just said, you're brought to life. I don't
Right.
remember, we can read it here if you want.
Right, yeah.
But the point is, no, Lazarus died too.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more we put all this weight into long-term life on
Yeah.
this earth, the more value you're going to put to the person who is able to extend life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And I was just thinking, I wonder what atheist philosophers like Graham Oppy think when atheist scientists kind of degrade their field of study and
I've always wanted that
expertise.
too.
Yeah,
I really have.
Yeah,
I wanted that too. And Bill Craig and
know.
others have taken them to task in debates when they're atheist philosophers there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like,
Why would you say that? What in the world? Yeah,
I know.
The same thing.
It's pretty insulting, I would
Isn't
think. Yeah. But I don't know.
And if you don't know, Graham Oppy is a well-known philosopher. Well, not that well. I guess he's pretty well-known, but he's certainly atheist. And he primarily writes against theism.
Mm-hmm.
That's his primary thing.
Yeah.
He constantly writes against
Yeah.
theism, the belief in God. Anyway,
He's
go
actually
ahead.
fairly respectful, though, like compared to...
Yes.
Yeah, you know.
I think he
he's-
wrote Methodist or something. I can't remember now. This is a long time ago. I'm maybe completely wrong. But
Yeah.
he had some exposure to it.
Right, yeah.
Which, in my mind, always helps.
Yeah.
It does.
It does,
It
yeah.
always, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
Michael Shermer, who's a well-known skeptic who edited Skeptic Magazine for a long time. I don't think he does anymore, but he's very respectful. Mm-hmm. I'd rather chat with him all the time. It's
Yeah.
the ones who are... Anyway.
Right, yeah.
Not always. It's just not the ones who, but
Right, yeah.
the redheads are the best.
Yeah. I
Just
agree,
say
yeah.
that. There's a
Yeah.
lot of data to back that up.
Yeah, second only to the, dark brown.
Dark brown
heads.
from
Yeah.
California.
Yeah. Exactly. From
Second
San
only.
Jose.
Thank you, Ryan. It's been great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, David.
I appreciate it. If someone wanted to go to your stuff and listen to you talk about what you talk about, particularly movies, where do they go?
Yeah, if you want to check out the Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast, and also Shoulder of Orion, the Blade Runner files, or Blade Runner podcast. I'm a co-host there with J.M. Prater, Patrick Green, Michael McCulloch, and Dave Gogol. And it's a lot of fun. Yeah, we're coming out with a website soon, and a lot of podcasts coming your way, even an audio drama in the works, and a lot of good things. So if you're interested in those films, those franchises, I think you'd really enjoy it. So come check us out.
If someone searched your name, would that help them as well find the podcast?
I believe so. Yeah, if you look
So you
me
wanna
up
tell
on Facebook or you can Google me, or if you're already stalking me, you probably found it by now.
We'll tell your name.
Yeah. But mainly our Facebook page. Just put in those names, Perfect Organism, or
We'll put
Shoulder
some
of
links. I'll put
Orion.
some links in the podcast. Too.
Okay, yeah.
To a different podcast, but they'll
Yeah.
click it anyway.
But when the website comes out, then it'll be right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll send them to Graham Oppy.
Yeah, there you go.
Spielberg.
Yeah. Love you, Graham.
This Ryan gets
Come
really
on.
good. He looks a lot like Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, that's
He looks
right.
like Michael Bay.
Yeah.
That's really good. All right, until next time. See you next time.
All right.
God bless.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you'll listen more. If you want more, go to davidpendergrass.com. There are tabs at the top that let you have access to all the podcasts I've recorded, to sermons I've done, books I've written. They're all there at davidpendergrass.com. You can also check me out on Facebook, facebook.com/glimpse of the kingdom. facebook.com/glimpse of the kingdom. And also look at my Twitter feed at glimpse the kingdom, or at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass. There's tons of ways to reach out. I hope you will. Send me your questions, send me your comments. If you'd like to support the ministries of Glimpse of the Kingdom, you can also find ways to give online on davidpendergrass.com. If you'd like for me to come and do some consulting, check out my website, davidpendergrassconsulting.com, and I'll be happy to come out and speak to your organization and help and train any way I can. God bless you. See you online.